Welcome everyone to our Pictas webinar. My name is Nikki and I'm excited to introduce you to our guest speakers, the incredibly talented Gèran and Michelle Rath. Welcome both, it's great to have you here today. Gèran and Michelle create the most incredible conceptual fine art portraiture. Gèran is going to share how they create this together, and I've had a sneak peek at what Gèran and Michelle have been creating for this series of webinars, and I think you will find it totally awe-inspiring because it's absolute genius. And as this is the first of 3 webinars about Gèran and Michelle's process, you'll definitely want to sign up for the next 2. So please look out for the Pictas email invitations for the follow-up events. A little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions, please add them to the chat box, and Gèran and Michelle will answer them as we go. So now I'm going to hand over to Gèran and Michelle, and I'll highlight the questions if any come up while you're chatting. Thank you.
Hi everybody, hope everybody's doing well. It's a great honor for us to be able to present our work to you all. And yeah, I'm gonna I've prepared a keynote presentation, so we're gonna run through it. As Nikki said, pop your questions in and we'll answer them as we go. And I hope that you enjoy and that you learn something from it. Right. Okay, is everybody good there? Okay. All right. So this is the first of the webinar series for Pictas, and let's get into this. This is a 3-point lighting for cinematic portraits webinar. We are Sculpt Art, and like Nikki said, it's Michelle and Gèran. And we've got 6 sections to work through today. Number 1, we're going to tell you a little bit about ourselves, and then we're going to go through the lighting we use, so you can see it's not very expensive or big kit that we have in our studio. And then we're going to talk a little bit about lighting for mood and purpose and how that ties into cinematic portraiture. Section 4, we go into the shoot prep that we had for the shoot that we did for this webinar, and then finally we build a cinematic portrait together. And then section 6, I'll go through the post-processing really quickly, just so you guys can see sort of what our method is and how we get to our final photo. We are Sculpt Art. We're a little studio in Nelspruit, in South Africa. It's not a very big town, so we have to do a various amount of things. You know, we're not in a massive commercial world where we can specialize in only one thing. So we have to kind of pick up on a lot of different things, and we have been doing this since January 2021. We used to be in the film industry many years ago, but we took a break to raise our 2 girls. And we've been in the tourism industry, but in 2021 we went and we started our studio in town, and it's been very, very rewarding for us. So these next couple of shots is the stuff that sort of pays the bills. These are the kind of things that we have to shoot to keep the studio alive. But what we really, really would love to start concentrating on full time is conceptual portraiture and digital fantasy art. Sorry guys, just give me a second. I needed my... Okay, so this is the kind of stuff that we'd like to produce full time, and we produce everything, you know, from scratch. So Michelle makes all the costumes and the wardrobe. And then we paint our studio whatever color, and then we go ahead and we shoot. Here we are in January 2021, starting in our garage with some hired lights, and it was a bit of a mess. We just wanted to see if we still remember all the principles that we had back in the day. But pretty soon after that, through luck and through great friends, we managed to get this space. So let's just do a little bit of a walkthrough through our studio. As you come in the front here, you've got Michelle's workspace. There you can see this is all the work behind the scenes for Sukechi, which is our next project. And there's her outfit that Michelle's busy making. And then this is the work table. As we come around here, this is the makeup space. Here she does everything from airbrushing to body painting and everything. Then we've got our little wardrobe section or changing room, and we're starting to collect props and wardrobe so that we can carry on doing shoots. And over here, we're going to start coming into the shooting table. There's the last job that we did still on the computer screen, and the next one is lying here waiting to be photographed. And then this is our studio floor. Like you can see, not an elaborate amount of kit. It's fairly conservative. We make our own backdrops now, which is a lot of fun. Then on this side is the gear cupboard with all the equipment in it. And then some modifiers at the top there, tripods, things we need for product photography. And then this is the editing desk. I'm on the right, Michelle's on the left. So that's basically our little space. It's a bit cluttered now as things have come along, but it's been very rewarding. So this was our very first shoot when we just opened our studio. We were so excited and we couldn't wait. So on that very first afternoon when the computer and everything was sort of set up, Michelle grabbed our oldest daughter, Aurora. She'll be modeling for us today as well. And we said, let's do a shoot. Let's just get everything off the ground. So, you know, it was, while we were doing this, we sort of had all these memories from the film industry who came back to us. And we really, you know, we were so blessed to have the space and to be able to do what we've always wanted to do. And yeah, we did the shot and we realized that, okay, we've got a lot more work to do. I definitely, you know, I had taken a gap from photography for many years. So that's the first shot that we produced. And I realized that I had to learn a lot about the new way that digital worked, Photoshop, which I hadn't opened in 14 years. So all these things, and it was very scary at first. And then in August of that year, we did this shot. This was our very first sort of not concept shot, where we said we're going to create something. We're not just going to shoot something, we're going to actually create it from scratch. So Michelle put a costume together. We grabbed everything we had around the house, old belts and little scarves. Michelle bought a dollar store hat and did it up, and those goggles as well. She painted them. And we got this shot and we realized, okay, this is where we want to go. This is the kind of stuff that we really want to do. And so, yeah, this is the shot that sort of put us on the path to where we're going today. All right, section 2, lighting that we use. We use the Godox system. And that's simply because of the Rand dollar exchange rate. These are very affordable lights in South Africa. So we've got 2 of these real 8300s. They're really great lights for when you begin. A little bit underpowered for outside shots, but for 300 watts is plenty inside the studio. And then we've got a FV200, which is our constant light, because we do have to do a little bit of video work sometimes as well. But it does have flash sync capability. So that's basically our kit. So 2 of those and an FV200. And then for today, we're going to just use a Sony A7C, Godox 8300, 2 of them. And then we're going to use a beauty dish with a honeycomb on it and a big umbrella. And that's going to be the tools that we use for the shot today. Okay, so while this is playing, I just sort of want to elaborate on some concepts. When you've got limited kit, you really have to get creative in what you're doing. So this scene that's playing at the moment was an exhibition we did for Pride Month last year. So you can see Michelle did full body makeup on the dancer there. And we wanted to work with blur and motion. So the really nice thing about these little lights is we can set them to flash at separate instances. So one can flash at the beginning of the sync of the curtain, and the other one can flash at the end. And you can set them up in 1/10 of a second increments. So with this, we decided, okay, so let's see how we can incorporate, how can we start doing blur with this? And you've got the constant light that's on the whole time. And then one flashes at the beginning, one flashes at the end. And then we started, I started talking to other people and other local photographers, and I realized that there's quite a lot of, there's a purist sort of sense or stance that a lot of people take. And they say that if something is not achievable in camera, then it's not real photography. And for me, coming back into photography after a good couple of years, I realized that, this idea of there's only one way to do certain things. Photography has to be like this, or you've got to have shot on film to know what you're doing, and so on and so forth. That none of that is really, true. You do what you do to get the idea that's in your head. Now, we call ourselves lens-based artists because photography is really just a tool that we have in our studio. It's one of the things we use. So like this shot, for instance, that we've got on screen there now, that was one of the raw images that came out. And this was another one. And then that was the final thing that we created from that image. And we've added elements in the post-processing system. We took pictures of the fabric separately while they were in flight and added them. And so we put all these things together. But you've got to use the full toolkit that's available to you. If you're limited in your equipment, then you've got Photoshop that you can use. You've got the expertise of makeup artists. You've got costume designers. So there's a lot of things that gets put together. Now, in cinematic portraiture, this is even more important because you're not always going to have the ideal conditions. When you're a master like Chris Knight, for instance, and you can organize big shoots and big sets, then yes, it gets much easier. But when you're just starting out, especially us with a limited space and limited kit, you've got to get really creative about how do you get all the elements that's in your head back into your photography. Okay, lighting for mood and lighting for purpose. So what I'm trying to say with this is that cinematic portraiture has got lights that are in your scene. So your practical lights, they're there for a purpose. And then you've got to create mood because, with cinematic with cinema, they're creating the narrative in the world that you're putting the viewer into, that emotion that you're going to get out of each scene. That is the mood that you have to create with the lighting. So as an example, here's an e-commerce shot of Jean. And this is just, this is purpose lighting. It's just to make the jeans look good. And so this one, for instance, is of a young adult. So getting overly moody with this kind of shot really wouldn't suit the style, wouldn't be appropriate. Here, for instance, editorial fashion, again, you're lighting for purpose. You're lighting the subject. You don't need to create too much emotion or mood in the photograph. Again, e-commerce, and this is where lighting can get fairly technical when you're lighting for purpose only, because you've got to know where the highlights are picking up and all your exposure settings and so on and so forth. But all you're doing is making the subject look good. That's what it's about. So as in this example, for instance, on the left, we got a little bit moody. So we've got the two lights on either side of the subject there. However, this was a brand photograph. So the brand wants their colors and their golfer looking good. So we have to add the third light. So again, you're playing between mood and purpose in this instance. In sport photography as well, general sport photography, mostly lighting for purpose to make the athletes stand out, to make them look good. But in fitness photography, you can really get nice and moody with your shots. Obviously, high contrast, make the muscles look good. So, again, just the various differences between the subjects. More of the stuff that we do in our studio, we shoot a lot of musicians. So there we can really play with moody lighting, high contrast images, and we start generating emotion within, you've got to bring the viewer into your subjects. So this shot, for instance, You know, obviously a lot of post-processing done there, but you try and emote or create emotion in the shot to bring the character to the viewer. And in cinematic portraiture, that's always important. You've got to bring the character back to the viewer so that they understand what that character is feeling, and they understand their situation. Okay, so what do we mean by cinematic lighting? And I don't mean 3 lights as in only using 3 lights. What I mean by that is background, key, and fill. Okay, so when we used to work in the film industry, the DOPs always told us, first start with the background, let's get that exposure and that light correct. Then we bring in the key, okay, for our actors, and then we fill where we need to. So I always look at the 3 different properties of lights. I look at the sources. Are we shooting, you know, are we replicating daylight, moonlight? Is it a candlelight in a room? Is it a ceiling light? And once I understand what the source is in my scene, I can then analyze the light qualities that source will give off. Okay, so obviously a candle in a room will leave us with a lot of darkness around the subject. Whereas if we're doing it in moonlight, then we've got a lovely cold light washed all over the scene. And then from that, I determine the intensity of the light source. So then I can start manipulating my lights and I can determine how I'm going to set them in order to get the final image correct. So you'll see later when we do the shoot, we've got a reflection of the movie screen back at our actress. And that, you know, because it's a reflection, it's a little bit underexposed. Whereas our dominant light, which comes from behind her, is going to be much more intense because that's a practical light in the scene. So I'm going to run through 1 or 2 lighting setups that we typically do, just to show you. In this one, in the middle of the screen, you've got the key light, which is actually generated by the little 8300 there, just to the right of that diffusion screen. We wanted a nice soft light onto the model's face in this one. The background is done by the 8300 in that gridded softbox on the right. That's shooting onto the flowers. And because of the grid, we're getting a nice direct light without too much spillage. And then we've got our fill and our hair lights here at the top left, which is just falling on her head and on her shoulders where the key light is not reaching. So from this set, we got the shot. And as you can see, it's not an elaborate set. It's a very simple set, but there's a lot of mood created just by manipulating those lights. Another one in a very sort of small space that we did. The key in this one is actually quite interesting. It's coming more from behind the model. And our background and our hair light is actually just that sort of black blanket that's hanging on the right there. The background light is falling onto that. And then our fill was just there because we've got fire in the shot. The fill is just motivating that little bit of, you know, so that there's not complete darkness on the front of the model. So from this setup, we got this particular shot. So you can see there, the key light is actually sort of coming more from the left, but more from a background angle. Okay, then I just quickly want to run you guys through Shield Maiden. This was our first successful composite, and this was done in November. When was this? 2021?
2021, yeah.
So it's been a big learning curve in a very short time, and we're still learning. Every single day, you know, we figure something new out and a new technique. So this shot, we understood that we wanted to do a composite, and we set it up in our studio. Again, we had the idea of her standing on ice, so the key light would be a very soft general force coming, or light source coming through this diffusion screen. And then we had to separate the fur on Michelle from the background. So that's why we've got our full and our backlight actually coming from the rear. The sunlight, which is the one at the top middle there, or the motivated sunlight, is also casting onto the background of the studio so that it's not completely dark, so I can cut out the hairs of the cloak. And then also we've got this sort of wraparound on her shoulder that's coming from the light on the left. So that's the shot straight out of camera. Sorry, I just want to see. My chat went away. That's fine, Nikki will tell me. Okay, so that's straight out of camera on the left. And because this was a person from the northern regions, we knew that we had to sort of make her skin tone a lot cooler. So we just changed that in Capture One. And there she is on the left in Photoshop. You know, we've cut out the background. I left the floor in because I wanted to retain those shadows. And I knew it was going to be on ice, so that wasn't too much of a problem. In the middle one, you can see how terrible my cutting out is. So we have to hide that somehow. So luckily we've got the Atmos panel in Photoshop, and we added the mist effect. And then finally, that is our final color graded photograph. So we've got the morning light sort of peeking over the mountain on the right-hand side. And then, you know, this composite worked out for us. So again, simple lighting setup, but you can achieve quite a bit with it. Just get smart about how you're going to, and I mean, this shot took me, I don't know, 3-4 days to try and perfect, and deleting it and redoing it. But I learned an incredible amount from doing this particular photograph in my composite work. So there you can see there's our key light coming through the diffusion screen, our sort of sunlight coming over that shoulder on her left-hand side. And then there's our fill that is just sort of that with that morning light wrapping around on the right-hand side again. There's the full light. Okay, so section 4, shoot preparation. So we always start with a mood board. This is, I think, just sort of film industry discipline that was worked into us. Always start with a mood board or a treatment sheet. And it's a good idea to copy work that's already been done to see, you know, I learn a lot from copying other people. However, don't plagiarize, don't put it out as your own work. Always credit the person that you're trying, you know, that the work you are trying to imitate. And don't submit it to competitions or put it out under your own name and say, this is my creation. You know, always give credit where credit is due. So, you know, because you learn from the masters. So always start with a mood board. There you can see our mood board as we started. For this particular shoot, we knew we wanted to use green because Michelle had a beautiful green dress. The original idea was, because it's a cinematic portrait, we said to ourselves, okay, so let's do an actress watching movies, you know, sort of in a 50s style theme. So we knew we had the green dress. We knew we wanted to use the flare of a light source. We wanted some atmosphere in the scene, so a lot of smoke in the scene. And I love using Pinterest, and I think AI is great for this sort of thing when you want to generate ideas. AI is going to be mind-blowing in this, but that's an entirely different topic and conversation. And we knew we wanted a sort of a saturated, either a red color, however, because it's Viva Magenta is the color of the year, and I happened to stumble across a sort of magenta gel, we decided on using the magenta in it. And we knew we wanted a practical light source in our scene. So these are the shots that we decided we're going to base our idea from. And then after this, what I normally do is I jump into set a light and I start creating the set. So I'm going to quickly just run through. You'll see I've sped it up, and it's going to quickly build a little set for us here. If you don't know the software, have a look at it. It is really fantastic for any photographer. So there on the right, I'm just setting up my camera settings. I know I need a slow shutter speed to let the practical light in. I know I'm shooting at f8 and ISO 200 because I normally shoot on ISO 100, but because we have that practical light, I'm not sure how bright it's going to be. I went to 200. So you can pop your model into the scene. On the right-hand side is what your image is going to look like out of your camera. In the middle is your set floor that you can build on. And as you can see, you can choose different models, props, you can customize them, you can put different dresses on. You can even change the makeup. So it's very customizable. It's a great piece of software. And there's a whole community where you can upload your lighting plans and you can download other users' lighting plans and actually mimic shots that they've done. So it's a really, really incredible tool. I've programmed my own 8300 lights in here. So there's putting the beauty dish on the right-hand side, and we're putting a grid onto it. And the reason for that is because it's reflecting off a movie screen, which is going to be on the right-hand side of the photograph. We can't have that spilling too much all over our scene. We want a very directional or a very small light source just falling onto our actress from the right-hand side. And then we're going to put our background light on the left, which is going to be a much bigger source. So we're using a big umbrella for that. I think I'm going to pop that in just now. There we go. So there we choose the big umbrella. And you can see how your light changes on the right-hand side while you're doing everything. Putting a magenta gel on there. Now, this wasn't a proper cinematic gel. It's a little stationery store gel that I bought. So the color is very, very, very saturated, and we're going to pull that down in post. And then over there, I'm putting my practical light in. So that's going to be the projector, the old movie projector that we're using. Putting that in there. And so, yeah, there we go. So we've got a set. It takes about, if you understand how you're using it, I'm no expert by any means, but it takes me about an hour to sort of put a set together. You can really get stuck in the posing and getting everything perfect, but there we are. I made a bit of a mistake. I didn't take our eyes off the camera, so she's got a bit of a weird look, but we're not going to do that in the actual shot. And there you can export your lighting diagram with all the specs on it. So it's a big time saver, especially if you're doing commercial shoots. This is invaluable software. So here we go. We've got our background light coming in from the left with the magenta gel on it. And we've got our key light that is sort of, you can see they're falling on her face and her chest. And then a little bit, it was really nice falling a little bit on her arm that's lying on her leg. So she's lit by the movie screen on the left. The projector is that light that you see on the right. So when the projector is on, that's what it's going to look like. So she's busy watching a movie. The reason the hand is in such a weird position is because we knew we wanted to add that smoke effect or that atmosphere. So we're going to give her a cigarette to hold. Satellite does not have a cigarette in its props. So that's why she's just oddly sitting like that. So again, there we go. And here it tells me at the bottom, full frame, ISO 200, 1/25 of a second, f8 with my 50mm lens. And then I know what light is this one, what's light is going to be on there. And I just used an Ariel 5C because they didn't have an old movie projector. But so that's the only light that we don't know what it's going to do in our actual set. It's the only wild card that we have to sort of manipulate either by distance or by, putting a little filter on the front or something. Okay, so here we go. I've talked enough. You can chat a little bit.
All right, guys. So yeah, just forgive me if I stumble. I am very creative. Everything happens in my head. I don't teach makeup. I do makeup. So I'm going to just tell you that I'm a movie buff. And when we started with the shoots, I knew exactly what I wanted, how I wanted my model to look. So I had to use very crisp, clean lines. The eyes had to be dark, they had to pop, and everything. I'm crazy about the finger curling in hair. It is definitely a 50s movie look, Hollywood look, and it has made a comeback, a big comeback. You can see I'm really into the moment there. So yeah, I just wanted to pop her eyes. I created a beautiful French roll. I tucked it in. It had a bit of a strange curve, which I loved. A little bit odd is always good. And then on the side, finger curled her hair, set it down really nicely. It's very important for your makeup artist to make sure that it's not little flyaway hairs, because it can cost a lot of time in post. But you can see those eyes popping there, and beautiful foundation. And just bring out the bone structure and make it look elegant, make her look as elegant as possible. Obviously, the false lashes always bring out the eyes tremendously. And I know her face really well because I made her myself from scratch. So yeah, it was nice to put a little face on my special girl. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me. The dress worked, the colors worked with the makeup, the hair worked. I think it comes with experience. I have been doing this for over 20 years. So it comes with experience, but being allowed to be creative with your knowledge is a wonderful space to be in. So I'm very blessed to do this with my husband, and he, as you can see, takes care of the technical. I know exactly what he's doing. I've been behind the camera quite a few times myself as well, in terms of photography, but I love to create. I'm the artist. So there we go. And then that's my 5 cents.
Okay, so just quickly to add here. So this, what you're seeing now, is more or less what the set looked like on the day. There you can see that lovely flare coming from the projectors that in the actual shot. The other projector we wanted to use, the one that actually has the 16mm film on it, or the 8mm film on it, wasn't working, unfortunately. So we had to use the slide projector to get the practical light in the set. All I want to do here is add, as a photographer, you know, really be kind to your makeup and wardrobe and the props guys, and if you have a set builder, be really kind to the rest of the people involved in the creative process, because, you know, we do one thing. Getting a God complex is very easy in sort of the photography or videography or DOP kind of field. But you know, we're doing one part of the job. Michelle does, you know, the 60–70% of the work before the shoot. I just sort of get to come and make it look good on a camera, but she's done all the hard work before. So we have a really good, and it's much easier because we're husband and wife, but you know, she hits me when I do something wrong. But we always communicate. You know, she's always asking me sort of, what is your light going to do? Is it going to be high contrast, or is it going to be soft light? I explain that to her. She can adapt her makeup, or, you know, I can say to her, loves, please, can you give us really hard makeup in this particular shot, because I'm going to be very far away with my light source and I really want to pop the makeup up. So, you know, you've got to be part of the rest of the creative team. And you've got to support each other to get the best out of the shots that you want to achieve.
I'm going to just interject there. Yeah, it's really, really important that you convey to your creative team what it is you're looking for, so that they can prepare and we don't have a lot of time wasted. You need to say we're going to have hard lighting. You need to explain it so that we are very crisp on our lines, or we can just be a little bit more relaxed. Not that I ever am. I'm a bit of a control freak, so I take it very, very seriously. So you have to communicate, and having pre-production meetings before the shoot. Gèran and I will sit and we brainstorm, and then I sketch and I draw, and I'll possibly build a sculpture or a miniature, and then he can see what's in my head, or I'll sketch it out. But you have to have your pre-prod before your shoot. You have to sit, you've got to meet, you've got to talk and communicate.
Right. So generally what I like to do is, while Michelle is finishing up makeup, I am always doing my lighting tests during that time. Big reason for this is I lose focus once the model is on the set, because then I start looking at how the light's falling on them, what they're doing inside the set, all those kind of things. So I make sure that I get a 90% done with my lighting design before the model actually come onto set. And also then it means that nobody else gets held up by you still fiddling around with lights. Obviously, if there's a tweak to do, that's great, but don't start setting up when the model is ready.
Yeah, it can also be exhausting on the model, and then you won't get your best out of your model. They'll get tired and crabby, and yeah, and then the shoot can take a turn for the worst.
Okay, so this is just a quick time lapse of us actually doing the shot. So here we are, we've moved from the wide, medium to close, and you will see that's always how we treat these sort of shots. I always shoot a wide first, then I jump into a medium shot and then a close up. Just want to see if I can play that again. So here we are starting off with a wide. You can see the camera is right far back, and then we've got, so little tweaks are being done to the lighting, and we added the atmosphere to get all that beautiful light glowing there. Took a little bit of a break, come back to the medium shot, and then finally do the close-up. Michelle's always sitting by the computer. She's checking focus, continuity. She's checking little, you know, is hairs in the face, all that kind of stuff. So that's a big help for me. When you're shooting alone, then you've obviously got to pay a lot more attention. But if you have someone that can be watching those kind of things, it's always better.
Yeah, if I can interject there, if you can find, or you have a partner or something to help you, just to look for the small things, you save yourself a hell of a lot of time. A model, for instance, can maybe lick their lips and the makeup's a smudge, and photographer is so focused on getting the shots that he maybe didn't pick up, and they have to start all over again. So it's always good to have another pair of eyes behind, and we picked that up from old film industry days, where you behind the camera, the director's screen, and you watch with him so you can see if something's wrong. They always say it's, if you haven't got time to get it right the first time, you're not going to have time to go back and fix it. So there we go.
Okay, so the next little bit I pre-recorded, because I would not be able to watch myself doing something in post and then trying to speak about it. So it's all pre-recorded. So enjoy. Yeah. I'm just going to go through a couple of the shots that we got through the set to show you sort of the process of how we're building the lights up together. No adjustments have been made in these first couple of shots. We can see our settings here, ISO 200, 1/30 of a second. This was actually a mistake. This should have been f8, but you'll see I'll realize that a little bit later, and then we're on the 50 more.
Gèran, we've lost your sound.
And that's obviously way too bright, and but there is a reason behind it, because I want to see where the shadows will fall with this background light, even though it's at its much lower setting. Also, in this situation, I can see what elements are going to be an issue. So this cable is going to be an issue, that cable is going to be an issue. This little bit of triangle white floor there we don't want. We're going to go to a 16:9 crop, which would eliminate this piece down here. That element there I'm not quite happy with, but you'll see as we go along, we start adjusting these things. Now we've got our crop correct, and we can sort of see where the elements are. We've added the key light, so projector only, our backlight or our rim light. Background light added to see where the shadows would be. And now key light added way too bright as well, so we can see what new shadows are going to be caused. So obviously the key light is causing this element here, that reflective problem there. These shadows are now new, so we've got to compensate for them. And what we did was we moved the key light down a little bit, and then with the honeycomb grid we angled that key light so it casts its light sort of on this area where the model would be. So now we go back again, key light is off, projector lamp stays on, and we've got our background set at a very low setting. Now we're going to start building it up. The reason I haven't got the gel on these shots here is because I don't, when I start off building the light, I don't want to be affected by the color yet. I just want to see what the actual white light will do. It's just easier for my eyes to sort of get a perspective on everything. And now that I'm sort of ready to start building up the elements, I can add my colors. So first of all, in this one, projector is off at this stage. I'm just looking at my background. This box here is obviously causing a shadow in that area. That's why there's no magenta light falling over there. And there again, the table is causing a shadow there. And so we swap between the lights, and I do all of this before the model gets onto set, so that I don't waste their time. And also, if they're not on the set, you can really focus on these elements inside your photograph. Once the model is on set, you sort of tend to start focusing on the actual person. And I try to avoid that. So that's why I do this while they're still in the makeup chair. And now we have the model in, and we can see our projector is doing a beautiful job at putting this backlight onto Aurora. It's a little bit close at this, so this space I don't think is big enough. I'm going to move this back in the set, because later on you'll see we want to create a lot of atmosphere in this beam of light. So this space isn't going to be enough for that. But again, we start with a backlight. It's the only light we cannot control the output of. We get that reading correct. Then we start adding a different light. So in this case, the key light. And now you can see the key light is dialed down a bit. And it's only putting light onto Aurora. And that's exactly what we want. We don't want the key light to be casting a whole bunch of light onto our scene. I am enjoying this highlight over there. So that's really great. So you can see there it's a dead spot. And now it's being picked up really nicely. And eventually now we've added our backlight. Sorry, let me just reset this one. Okay, so now our backlight, we can start building our background light up again. Okay, so went from key and projector, key and backlight to background and backlight. And now we've got our background raised up a little bit. Still a couple of issues we've got to sort out. This box is now distracting on that side. So we're probably going to swap these two around. And we've added our key light in this instance, beautiful eye pickups in the eye. And we will now can start with playing with poses and fine-tuning the final element. So there you can see I opened up this space a little bit, which works a lot better now. This box is still not looking good over here. We are going to move it later on, as we'll see. And now we're just starting to play with body shape and where she should be playing for the light. So what I often do is I ask the models to look, at 3 different areas in the scene to see where the light is going to cause issues on their faces. Obviously, in this instance, the key is set at a very sort of side-on angle, so she has to keep playing her face towards that key line. Looking at the camera or looking in the other direction is not going to work for the shot. So, and also there's a lot of magenta in the scene now because that gel is just sort of a stationery store, a bought gel. But I'm going to tone it down a lot in post. I'm already thinking about that at this stage. So it doesn't bother me that it's so purple here on her arms, because that is going to give me the opportunity when I dial it down to give me a lovely cold tone. And it's going to go a lot more to the blue end of the spectrum. But without it, if I just shot this in white light, there wouldn't be enough separation between this light over here and what is happening with the background. So I wanted, between this warm color and this colder tone, I really want a big difference there in post. So we're doing that with that in mind. Okay, again, just changing the poses. I like what the arm is doing here at the moment. This hand will need to do something, and we've got a small problem there with that highlight being too bright. Now the face position is starting to get where it's supposed to be. And so we carry on small adjustments. I like this composition a lot better with this open space. We can fill that with a beam. This projector unfortunately wasn't working, but we are going to add a beam in post. So we can do that with Photoshop and cheat a little bit. Now we've given her a prop. That's looking good. There's something to play with over here. And you can see that we're now starting to add atmosphere in the set. So it's very important building these things in steps and not sort of adding everything at once. It's just too much to think about. So once you've got one thing right, move on to the next thing, and you just sort of compose a better photograph. So the atmosphere is coming in. However, because of our shutter speed, we are not getting enough blur in the smoke over here, and we're not giving the constant light enough time to reflect off these particles into the camera for us to see them all the way through. So what we're going to do now is we increase, or rather lengthen, the shutter time so that we've got this lovely, beautiful beam of light forming. And that's exactly what we wanted. Her eye position is good, her hand looks good, and this is pretty much what we wanted out of this photograph. Solve that highlight issue just by putting the dress over it, and everything is looking good. This is going to give us nice motivation for the reflected movie screen. That is the motivation behind this light. And like I said, we're going to drop the magenta color quite a bit in post. So there we are. I love the color correction abilities in Capture One. I think it's very, very good for, compared to some other software. Capture One is the king of color. I am not an expert in color. I still need to learn about those things, but just with a simple preset. So for instance, here with the CN14 preset that sort of sorted out a lot of my issues. You can now see the cooler tones coming in, that magenta is not so vivid anymore. And now we can play with this in Photoshop. So just to indicate what I did here, so this is pretty much our final shot. However, she is burning now because of that increased shutter time. She's burning because that constant light keeps falling on her skin. And how I'd fix that in post, I'd simply just make a copy of this picture, drop the exposure quite a bit for this particular image, and then I'd mask this out and lay it over my final picture in Photoshop. Right, off to the medium shot then. So we moved camera position a little bit, changed the angle. Again, we're going to want this sort of beam of light falling in it, and we start playing with poses. That pose we saw worked a little bit better. And now we give her a prop again to play with. However, be careful of shadows coming in when you add props. But a small movement can correct that. And eventually we decided this, this separation was maybe a little bit too big in the medium shot. And so we asked her to change the position. You can see how the body is now filling in this negative space, and the hand is filling in that negative space for us. So just a quick adjustment of the key light. And that's our final shot that we're going to be using for this medium shot. I like how this beam is sort of leading the eye in, and then there's something to pick up on and eventually focus on her face. Even though there's quite a bit of negative space in these images, I think it works, and that I think is our final selected shot for the post process. Keeping in mind that when in Capture One, you add your whatever adjustments you do on the previous photograph, you have the option of sort of pasting it straight as it comes out of the camera onto the next photograph. So you can just shoot in this look and sort of try and keep the looks similar, which I think is a really great feature. Then we went into the close-up. Typically, I wouldn't shoot a close-up portrait with a 50mm, but we wanted to keep everything the same for this set. So I really liked this shot for the close-up. However, with the distortion of the 50mm, I might just shrink her face a little bit in post so that it looks more like a proper portrait. I think we're a little bit close for this particular 50mm. And then this, I just wanted to demonstrate, take a picture for your makeup artist in your lighting conditions, just so they can see what their makeup is doing in the light. And it's very beneficial for them to be able to see how the makeup is affected by your lighting, because remember, they're doing makeup in a normally a well-lit scene. So under your lighting, it is a good idea for them just to see what the colors look like, is there any elements that we had to fix in the future, and everything looks really good here. There's no issues. Obviously, we're going to do skin treatment in post. This is a little bit bright, so I'm going to drop these in post a little bit, and obviously I'll fix all of that in the skin. I might add a little bit of volume to the hair on this side, I think. So there's our final shot. So I think I'm going to add a little bit of volume there, and just adjust the face a little bit. But I think this works for me as a close-up. Okay, so just to quickly answer Mateo's question here, after all this work that goes into it, we only do keep the best shots, and so generally for this kind of thing, a wide, medium, close is what we'll use. I'm not 100% in love with the medium shot, the final medium shot for this, so I'll generally just use the close-up and the wide shot. When we shoot, sometimes we shoot like for instance, when we did Harpy, those wings that are behind us over there, we kept 7 shots because we wanted to tell a little bit of a story. That one had a narrative, more of a narrative build, even though it was just in a white space. So through Michelle's performance, we try to put a narrative together. So we kept 7 shots out of the total there. But it really depends on what you're doing with the shoot. You know, when you're planning, you'll kind of know how many shots you'll need in order to get it. So the more you plan, the less you actually work on the studio floor, because you know, I need this and this and this. And so once you have it, you know it's done, and you don't even bother, because otherwise, you know, especially when we started, I'd ask Michelle, oh, please, let's try and get another one. Let's try this angle. Let's try this lighting. And you just make everybody tired and upset. So plan properly and then just get what's absolutely necessary. I see we're running a little bit over time. I'm gonna do the post process now. If you can just bear with us there. What do you do when some props just doesn't fit into the whole composition like you've envisioned in your head? Do you try to make them work somehow, or use something else at hand? This happened to me a few times. Good question. So yeah, sometimes things just don't work, and you'll see in the medium shot of this one, I think, you know, the excitement of the whole thing just got the better of me. I did not notice that the can that I put underneath the projector in order to lift it for the medium shot actually made the projector skew, and so the whole table and everything looks a little bit off tilt, and I don't like it. That's one of the reasons why I don't like the medium shot in this. So often, if a prop or something doesn't work, if it's possible for me to remove it in post or replace it in post, I will. But again, it comes down to planning. So using satellite, drawing it, getting your mood boards absolutely perfect, talking to the other creatives on the day so that you have backups is absolutely essential. You know, we have a whole bunch of stuff lying here behind us that we use and have as backups to do on the day. So the little camera that she was holding in her hand was actually one of two options that we had, because we didn't know which one was going to look better, and so on and so forth. So if it happens, try and have a plan B if you can.
Yeah, we generally make sure, like for the dress, I had another two options. Here, if it didn't work, I had more options. So you always have to have extra tools. If you can get it right the first time, good for you, well done. You were very lucky that day, but you have to have options, like different lashes, extra nails, extra dress, extra props. We raid our house, our parents' houses, everybody. We just raid everybody's homes and have extra options on the day, just in case.
So another example, for instance, with Harpy, that mask that Michelle made, the long big mask, that obviously needed a strap to stay on, and I knew that strap was going to have to be removed in post in every shot that we take. So, you know, when Michelle was busy, the way I shot it as well, I realized, okay, so if I shoot at too much of a head-on angle, you know, then the strap's going to get quite difficult because of the way it goes into the ear. Whereas if it was more of a side-on angle, it was easier for me to remove. So you have to learn to sort of go with the flow of those things as well. And the more you do of it, the more you realize, okay, my ability allows me to remove this or add that or do this. And so you stress about it less on the day because you realize what you'd be able to do in the end.
We did have another option of fixing the mask onto my face, but I was moving around a lot. So we had to have a more secure option. So we went with the band.
Since this is all based on precise planning and vision, how do you guide the model to be exactly in the mood you're looking for? I mean, I understand it's all about the communication, but do you choose to be detailed in the posing or prefer to let them evoke emotion? Okay, this is a great question. All right, so I'm very, very lucky in this. My daughter's my one model, and Michelle is my wife's my other model. Okay, and yes, we shoot other people as well, but for a lot of our personal work, it's Michelle and Aurora, and Talo is also modeling for us now, so that's really exciting. With Aurora, she is really great. You say to Aurora, I need you to look sort of smoldering 50s female Hollywood actress, and she knocks it like that. She nails it. And Michelle performs. So for instance, with Shaman's Dance, the one where she's got the horns and the mask and she's all dressed in black, and that shot I showed you guys earlier, you know, that stuff she actually performs in the set. So I literally stand back, I don't say a word. She goes through this sort of dance and she acts out the whole thing. Whereas with other people, I often have no, I don't. I'm very bad at speaking to people. Michelle in the makeup chair softens up the models and the actors.
I don't know if it's, yeah. So I prepare the person. First of all, it's very important for your makeup artist to calm the person, make them feel at home, safe. They're in good hands, and you need to show that you give a damn. So ask about them, and once they're relaxed, you can start priming them for the shoot, because I know exactly what we want. So I need to make the person think, right, so this is the shot we want. This is the sort of attitude you have to have in front of camera. Don't be shy. And I'm with them all the time. And push that emotion. So if it's a very upbeat shoot, we've got upbeat music playing, we giggle, we laugh, and it's very happy, straight out of camera, out of makeup, ha 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 ha. And I've had that experience. Comes from film. It comes from television and film, where you've got an actress who walked in, who perhaps had the worst night of her life. Her bags under her eyes are like this, and drama, she hasn't slept, and it's up to me, the makeup artist, the magician, to make her look her best and make her feel her best, so that we get the shots. And that's kind of how we do it.
Yeah. I think, you know, for me, from a male perspective, you've got to be sensitive towards, especially working with female and younger female models or subjects. You've got to be very sensitive to the way that they feel on set. I am not a small person, so I can be quite intimidating, and I don't know what's going on over here. So I look angry all the time. So I've become mindful of that, because Michelle keeps telling me, you know, you're scaring the people.
Telling him for years.
So you've got to be mindful of the way that you are, and that it helps sitting before you start shooting and all that stuff. Just having a conversation, finding out how their day was. Are they excited about this? Okay, this is the sort of, and again, it comes down to planning, putting the mood board in front of them and saying, these are the kind of expressions we're looking for. This is the feeling I'm trying to get out of the shots. So if you have all of that beforehand, when you're shooting, you know, the shooting part should actually be the shortest part of the whole ordeal. That should be quick in and out. It's the preparation, the building, the makeup, the wardrobe, getting the wardrobe together, all that stuff takes most of the time.
But bearing in mind as well, guys, none of us are perfect. So like when you work as a team, it's always good to have, like, just ask your makeup artist to stay on for the shoot and to work with you, because they can see when you're so engrossed in your photography and the lights and everything, maybe you've just forgotten the model for a second. And I know from experience, some models, especially your top models, can get quite like a little bit devastated that you haven't like wafted around them for the last 10 minutes, or attention's gone off them, and you can see it's like a waltzing flower, like, and so it's very important that there's two of you. One is busy doing the technicals and someone else is doing the emotional, the psychological, the keep the person upbeat, or yeah. So it's very good to have just someone to back you up on the day. And keep an eye on the things. You cannot watch everything and see everything. Nobody is that talented.
Okay. So just to keep time down, I'm going to start the post-processing that I went through, but I'm not going to, because the medium and the close-up are essentially duplicates of the white. So I'm not going to run through those layers as well. I'll just do the white shot layers.
Okay, so the post-processing part of the shot. First up, full disclosure, I am by no means a professional retoucher or even good at retouching. What you're going to see now is literally it's my process. I would not advise anybody take this as gospel. If there's something in here that helps you, fantastic. But I think anybody that understands Photoshop properly is probably going to look at the fringe and say, don't ever open this program again. But this is what I can do for now. So here we go. First up, I create a background copy so that I don't affect my original layer. And then after that, what I did in this shot is I brought that underexposed from capture one, the one I duplicated, in order to get these highlights correctly. So that's what I did with this layer. I just brushed in those highlights so that they are protected. And also on this layer, what I always do is I'm going to select my subject first. And I make sure I've got a good selection in so that I can work on this particular subject in my upcoming laying. So what I do is I just drag this mask and I copy it onto the other layers so that I do not affect my background and my subject at the same time. I work on this. Then we did a frequency separation, just so that you understand where all these layers come from. I use Retouch Pro and this panel here, and it has a sequential sort of process that you just go through, and you use all of these things to do a retouch process. And then the other thing that I like to use are the Atmos effects. In here is a bunch of light effects, reflections, flares, and so on that you just going to throw onto this photograph. So, for instance, this projector wasn't working on the day, and we want to create a light beam out of that as well. We're going to use Atmos to create that. Then next up, we did skin tones, added some skin glow, and then we did grain and the contrast just for the subject only, and we do a dodge and burn effect. Then we work on the eyes, so it's iris, white on the eyes a little bit. And let me just get a little bit closer here so you can see the effect of this. The iris, white in the eyes, iris color. We've just brought back the green in Aurora's eyes, and then the details just sharpens the eyes for us. And then same with the mouth. And then we added a luminosity. So now up to this point, what I've done now is I've sort of done everything I wanted to do to the subject. She is now complete. And normally what I will do is I'll duplicate all these layers and then flatten them out so that I've got one level that I'm working on, or one layer that I'm working on. And now we're going to look at adding our background elements into the rest of the set. So there's nothing I really want to move around in the set. Everything, I'm very happy with how everything turned out on the day. I just want to accentuate something. So we want to make this beam look a little bit better. We want to add a beam there. We want a little bit more reflection coming from this supposed movie screen that's motivating that light on the side. And then also give the cigarette that's supposedly creating all of this smoke, give it a bit more smoke effect there. As you can see, we're just adding these elements. And for anybody that doesn't know how the Atmos panel works, I'm just quickly show you here. So we take, for instance, this spotlight, just drag that on, resize it to whatever you want it to, and then change the blend mode to screen. And it's that simple. And you can play with the opacity a little bit depending on what you want, but it's really nothing special, nothing complicated. You guys are geniuses. They made it very easy for the user to actually use these effects. Okay, so we've worked through everything in terms of our retouching on the subject, and now we go over to our presets, and here's a whole bunch of different presets that's going to affect the colors in our photograph and the contrast and the black point and so on. And I knew from, just from previous experience, I knew cinema was going to work very nicely for this, so it's going to cool down the picture a lot. And the blend mode for this is soft light, sorry. And I've dropped the opacity down to 34. Let me just show you what this would look like. We apply it straight on. So that's what it does. And then you just use your discretion to either, decrease it or change the blend mode, how you want it to affect the picture. So we've got cinema on there, and then vintage gives us a nice contrasty feel. The greens are really doing magic under this, or with this preset. And I feel like the color is now exactly where I want it to be. So what I also do is on my other screen, while I'm doing this, I will have a notes open, and I will record these layers and what blend mode I'm using, what the opacity is, and so on in sequence. So when I retouch the medium and the wide shot, I follow that same pattern so that there's continuity to all of it. Especially when I do bigger jobs, like if I do a catalog or something like that, that's really important for me, because I'll lose track of what I'm doing, or you're quickly doing another job in between and you can't remember what you did. Just follow the notes, sort of in bullet points, and you need to do everything again. And then finally, here in the retouch panel, it just tells us how to enter photograph off, so we do details, a little bit of background blur, contrast, and that's how we finish off. So there's details, grain, background blur, and final contrast. And here's our edited photograph. And I'm very happy with how this all turned out. All looks good to me. We can move over to the medium shot. And it's exactly the same process. I'm just going to follow mine all through that.
Okay, so there's our wide shot. And this is our final medium shot. Sorry about the sound in that previous recording, guys. I didn't have a stereo channel there for some reason. And then finally our close-up that we did. So that's it. What I did do is I did send these pictures to a professional retoucher just to get their opinion and what they would have done with it. So I just sent it to them. I said, please just retouch. I didn't give them any special instruction. So this is what the retoucher did with them. Obviously, different color panel in their mind, and I always enjoy to see this, what other people, would have done with my photograph, because I think that it's, everybody has a very different view on stuff. So this is their rendition. I like the skin tones that they did there, and that's their close-up version. So there we go. That's pretty much it from our side. Let me just stop the screen recording or sharing.
Wow, thank you both. That was amazing. And I think how you work is incredible. I'm blown away by how much you openly share as well, because and giving credit for, like the retoucher and everything, because it's a rare thing. People don't do that.
Oh, well, you've got to, like I said in the beginning, as much as Michelle is part of the process and my success depends on her, when if I'm doing anything commercial that's beyond my skill set, then I send it off to retouchers, and the retouchers are incredibly important, because it will take me another three years to learn all those little details that they know already. So give credit where credit is due.
Yeah, but I think that's something we learned in the film industry. It's a very good discipline, and you learn a lot of good disciplines in making of movies and television series and commercials. Is you realize nobody can take all the credit. If it isn't for the whole team, you get nothing. You need even the guy who makes you the coffee that keeps you awake while you're doing your job. Everybody's important. So it's good to just pay it forward.
I think it's great because it's just ego-less, which is brilliant. No, it is brilliant. I think it's amazing. And I actually had a question for you both. I was going to ask about how you work together, and actually you answered that for me, because I could just see the respect and awareness that you both have for each other and your creativity.
I'm waiting for the end of this, then I'm going to get out my
big stick.
A big stick. No.
Yeah. So just quickly from my side on that, again, from the film industry days, there's a different hierarchy in the movie industry, at least here in South Africa. So when you start off, you are nothing, and you work your way up through the ranks, and that's a good thing, because you learn. Every single department has to have its respect in its own way. So nobody can just come in and say, well, I'm the best, I can do this, and the poor makeup girl doesn't matter, she must just bring coffee. That doesn't work. It's the quickest way of being kicked out of the business, I think. So you've got to work with respect. And I mean, we fight a lot, there's a lot of things that we don't agree on, but we'll sit and we'll talk about it, and we'll try and approach it logically, and we'll hash it out. So yeah, we do it, Michelle.
That's great. It's great to know that, you're even honest about your fight about it as well, because that's great too, because, you're both creative and you've both got an input. It's kind of 50-50, isn't it? Coming together and everything. It's brilliant. Yeah. Totally inspirational, I thought. You're magicians. Both of you. Thank you.
Thank you
guys so much, and thank you for the opportunity of letting us ramble on for an hour, well, more than an hour. Sorry for keeping everybody.
No, it's great. And to be honest, I can't wait to see the follow-up webinars as well. So if anybody here wants to sign up for the next webinars, that would be great. We'll send an email out anyway. So thanks everyone for being here. It's been really great. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining us, and yeah, see you again soon.
Yeah, have a great weekend.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Speak soon. Bye.
Bye.